Ghost of Yotei, Ghost of Yotei. This is the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, and I just finished it recently. It came out a couple months ago, but I'm a bit late to the party. I finally finished it. I just thought I'd talk about it in a kind of review style form, but it's not really a review. It's just my thoughts on the game. I just wanted to kind of ramble about it. So if you guys would like to listen to that, I hope you stick around for the rest of the video. I'm going to split it into 5 categories, which will be exploration, gameplay, characters, and story. Because I think those are the sort of main parts that make up the game. I think so. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Ghost of Yotei. It's good. Now this is an open world game, of course, so you gotta explore, it's kind of part of the job. There's a lot of content you can actually do and see throughout the game, to be fair. There's the sort of offsprings that you can do to increase your health. There's the altars of reflection that give you upgrades, obviously, and there's a bunch of different types of upgrades too, as you can see on the screen. And then there's also like doing the bamboo sticks to get more spirit, which is the bottom left thing, to give yourself more health back or more moves and stuff like that as well, which is pretty cool. Now these activities, at the end of the day, they are kind of simple, where all you really do is you go to a place and then you do the thing. So you just go to the hot spring place and then you just take you go inside the hot spring and then you get your health. Or you just go to the altar reflection, you bow down, you get upgrades. But what I do think it does well is that it helps both on a story and a gameplay level. So I mentioned the previous benefits in the gameplay aspect, but also in the story, like with the hot springs, for example, when Atsu goes in there, she talks about how she feels about certain things like Mount Yotei or her brother or whatever, and like her mom and stuff, which I do think is pretty cool because it just gives you a glimpse to her mind, how she views the world, how she views her goal of revenge, whether it's all even worth it or not, right? Which is obviously a lot of common thing with these revenge tales, but I just think it's pretty cool how they integrate it in a way that it helps in both the story and the gameplay level. The bounties as well were also pretty cool, but because there wasn't much of a story reason for me to do them, I didn't really care about them personally. The main thing that you really do them for is the money that you get, but I was also getting just more than enough money from the actual story itself that I didn't feel the need to do them. But there are a good chance for people that want to do them. I do also think the way the wind is used to guide you towards your pin waypoint is like one of the coolest things in gaming ever, because it just looks cool artistically, but also it helps keep you just immersed in the world, right? So you're not constantly looking at your map. You're just always in the game, and then you're always using just the environment to tell you where to go. Although I did still use it to the map to know where to go, because I'm just too nervous that I keep going the wrong way. Every single second I keep thinking that I'm going the wrong way, even though I clearly wasn't, but I just always overthink that, so I just keep using it. But for the average player that doesn't think like that, it should be very, very useful for you. So I'd say overall that I did enjoy the side content. I've clearly been praising it, but I do think it's kind of generic in the way that how it's done, like how you do actually, but how it's integrated into the actual exploration, I think is quite cool. So they should be given credit for that. The graphics are crazy. They're insane. Now the gameplay for Yotei is pretty similar to Tsushima in the sense that you have 4 styles that you can switch between on the fly. But instead of stances like in Tsushima, this time you have weapons. And I personally much prefer the weapons approach than the stances, and just because it felt a lot more different when you changed. The different weapons felt more different than the different stances. I think that's why I personally prefer. There was like more weight to them, I guess. The stances also didn't look as appealing visually, at least for me personally. Like with the weapons, your whole body changes to the appropriate stance, which is pretty cool, and it just looks more cooler as well, I think. I also think just because obviously on the PS5 compared to PS4, the game is also a lot more fluid, a lot more seamless, which also I think helps make it, in my opinion, better than Tsushima's in terms of game. The stories attached to the masters that you learn the final sounds from are also pretty good, like Hanbei with his arm being caught by Saito, and him sort of in a way giving his style for you to enact the revenge that you need to. Yoshida with his sort of quest for redemption in a way, and him also giving you the tools that you need to enact your revenge. All of these stories were also quite well done, I think. I was pretty invested in them, to be honest. I quite liked how they also, outside of being helpful in their own stories and giving you a gameplay benefit, they also would add to the bigger picture of just the world and what's going on with the Yotei 6 and all that. I think it helps just build the world a lot more, which made me a lot more invested in even the side characters in this game as well. I quite enjoyed that personally. However, I didn't really use the range weapons at all. I personally don't like using ranged in sort of melee focused games, so it's not really my thing. I just did not enjoy using them at all. I think I barely used the bow at all in the game. The kunai and stuff were kind of cool just because they were very quick and they sort of fed into the gameplay, like the melee focused gameplay, a lot better, which is what I was, playing the game for, right? I just think the range combat was kind of boring. It's kind of basic, but that just might be my personal taste rather than an objective view of how it's done in this game. Because there might be some other people that used it quite a lot, but just in my experience, it wasn't that fun, so I just never used it. There's also charms you can add on, which, as you can see on screen, is on next to outfits, and over there you can just add a bunch of sort of minor benefits or major benefits. It's sort of like a very light RPG in that aspect. For you can like, for example, you increase the amount of health you have, reducing all melee damage taken, stuff like that. It just extra little benefits that make the game a bit easier. And it's also just a good way for you to customize Atsu in a way that is your own. Now, I'm personally a much more sort of up close and personal kind of guy. I don't really do stealth in many games because I kind of run out of patience. Everything is kind of slow, so I just want to fight people straight away. In Yotei, the stealth was pretty fun, but at the end of the day, it's relatively simple. In the sense of that you just sneak around, hurt people, or kill people. There's also sake jars, empty sake jars you can pick up that can distract the enemies, and then you can just take them down, as you can see on screen here. There's also some upgrades that you can get, like taking down enemies consecutively or being able to take down sort of the higher level enemies instantly. Those upgrades are pretty cool, but obviously this is not a stealth game, so I'm not going to focus on this too much, but it does feel serviceable. It's just good. I do think maybe for more stealth experts, like people that actually really play stealth games, they might not like it as much because at the end of the day, it's kind of the same stuff that you've seen in other games, and they might be kind of annoyed by it. But for someone that doesn't really play too many stealth games, I quite enjoyed it. But because I'm not a stealth person anyways, it doesn't really do much for me. So I didn't really do it too much, but yeah, that's kind of my opinion on the stealth aspect of the gameplay overall. However, one thing I do want to mention, which is a negative I think, is that the weight of the stealth isn't as there anymore in terms of the story aspect. Because in Ghost of Tsushima, you become a ghost, and part of the story is whether you go for the up close and personal samurai killing approach, or you go down the ghost approach, which is sneaking around and killing people. Yotei, because it's a different story, revenge story, it doesn't really have that weight of the story helping it. So I just think that is a negative in general, just because it doesn't have the sort of impact in terms of the story that it had in Tsushima. Now to get on to one of the main bits, which is the characters. Now this might be controversial, but I really like the characters for the game much more than Tsushima. We'll get into what I think about the actual story in a bit, because there's a lot to say about how it compares to Tsushima. But if we're talking about the characters specifically, then yeah, I do like them a lot. My personal favourite's gotta be the Kitsune, because that story happened in a slightly different way than what you'd expect. And how Atsu reacts and the way a character changes was also really cool to see. The Kitsune probably was the most significant member, at least that I felt. But you can't go into that without too many spoilers, obviously. The other Yotei 6 members and their sections were obviously pretty good as well, but they weren't as interesting. That's not to say they were bad or anything, obviously. Not all, of course not. But the game definitely does a good job of making you hate them at the very least and want revenge, like Atsu does. Like even Saito is like, he's like the main guy, right? He's the one that all of this is building towards. All of the side quests, all of the main quests, all of the fighting styles, and everything you get is all leading up to fighting Saito. And they do a very good job of making him intimidating and scary, like a very antagonistic character. They do a good job on that, but I would say even then, like, because he's not on screen, which I don't feel like some sort of attachment to him. Some of the notes you find are pretty interesting, with how he felt betrayed by Atsu's father, and then because of that he went to go kill his whole family to sort of set an example and prove a point. But outside of that, I just wish we got to see him more. I don't think those two are enough to make him like a super interesting antagonist, in my opinion. But they do a very good job of making you hate all of the Yotei 6, but really cheer on Atsu on her sort of story for revenge. They show you how these Yotei 6 members have like completely messed up everything. It's really cool to see. I was like fully invested. It was great. Now this is the big one, the one that most people probably came to this game and this video for. And yeah, I pretty much agree with the consensus that it isn't as good as Tsushima, the story at least. I personally think that the story is on a surface level on par, but Tsushima does have just that layer of nuance and so critical thinking that Yotei just doesn't have. The whole thing of like honor and having to go against the tradition of the samurai to be a ghost was like such a cool concept, especially because it was the first one. It was kind of unique in that way. And because Yotei's story is about revenge and killing the whole Yotei Six, that nuance kind of just disappears in favor of a more simpler story that I think is just unfortunately kind of generic. Like aside from some story beats, the story does kind of go by how you'd expect for a revenge story. So if you're looking at the story specifically, and you played Tsushima, I don't think you'd be too impressed. Even the title like Ghost of Yotei doesn't have as much depth as Ghost of Tsushima, which you realize when you've experienced both stories, and is due to some of the reasons I already mentioned, right? With like related to when I was talking about the stealth in the game. Now, hearing all this, you might think I prefer the story of Tsushima over Yotei's, but I think people are going to kill me for this. But that is just isn't the case. Whilst I do think Tsushima's story is better, I never enjoyed Yotei's a lot more. And the main reason for that is just that it felt more personal the whole time. And I guess more, I don't know what you call it, vile. What I mean by that is the story felt way more sort of guttural and emotional. And I think that what really helped is the flashback to Atsu's childhood and how the Yotei Six just kind of murdered and killed the whole family. Like in the flashbacks and the overall game, the performances and the voice acting, same as Tsushima's, was super, super good, which does help elevate the sort of depressionness of the story to like an even higher level. Everything felt so closely linked with Atsu and what she's going through. I do prefer when I play games sort of personal stories over more epic stories because you get attached to the character a lot more and it's more relatable, I'd say, in that aspect. Not to say Tsushima's story sort of didn't feel personal, of course it did, especially in the last act of Tsushima. But I think I just vibed with how Yotei did it a lot more personally. So yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed my time with the game, and I know I'm gonna get some hate for this, but personally, I enjoyed it a lot more than Tsushima. Story, I do agree, it's not as good, but I personally still thought it was still solid, and everything outside of the story, like the previous categories I mentioned outside of the story, I thought was just an improvement in pretty much every way. But yeah, that's my opinion on Ghost of Yotei. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. Let me know what you guys thought of the game in the comments and whether you disagree or agree with my takes. I feel like a lot of people might disagree with my character takes, maybe, because they probably prefer Tsushima's characters, maybe. But, let me know in the comments. Please remember to like, subscribe, and do the rest of the YouTube stuff, because that would really help me out a lot. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to my thoughts on the game. See you guys in the next video. Take care and peace. Bye bye.